Pay up. You are going to have to face up to the consequences of your own actions for once.
But you must look on the brighter side, Vivian. I remember a time when the funds were saved...
I'm not going to tell you again, Mr. Hope. Now, I suggest you take this cheque and be very grateful that I'm not prepared to ruin my party by creating a scene.
You owe us 5 times that.
Mr. Hope, you wouldn't like it if I had Colonel Mustard here give you what I really owe you, but if you and your wife aren't out of this house in 5 minutes, that is exactly what I'm going to ask him to do. Poor Vivian, she told me they were hustlers, but I thought it was just sour grapes. She's going to be very relieved. But why didn't Pete warn us?
Well, he didn't know what they were doing at first. They were very convincing.
Oh! My wife! Call the police! My wife has been murdered!
So, bridge hustler Mrs. Janet Hope is dead. And the evidence points to these 6 murder suspects. So there are the murder suspects, the 6 weapons, and don't forget, there are 6 rooms: the drawing room, the study, the kitchen, the dining room, the billiard room, and of course the library. Those provide the clues to tonight's brutal murder. Now, our detectives are ready to interview the suspects, but first, to decide who actually kicks off, who goes first, Ned and Zena, a test for your powers of observation. What was special about the champagne that Mrs. White was giving to the Hopes?
It's pink.
It was pink, correct. That earns you the right to put 3 questions to our suspects and then to make a deduction as to the guilty party. But first, may I say to you that 5 of the suspects here are telling the truth. Only the murderer can lie. Your first question, please.
You have it, Zena. You're the professional.
Well, you've already asked us about our observations, but my first question was going to be for Mrs. White. Why did you give pink champagne only to Jeremy and Janet Hope?
Well, it was really a spur-of-the-moment decision. I thought they deserved it.
Why were they picked out specially? What was in it?
Well, there was a little something in it, as a matter of fact.
What?
What? It was just a little rat poison.
What? What?
Second question. Okay, second question.
She's admitted the rat poison. I mean,
Food for thought there, I think, Ned.
Yes, yes.
She apparently didn't put it in the bottle. She must have put it in...
Why did you empty out the bottle?
Well, I didn't want to drink it, did I?
But you didn't put it in the bottle. You put it in the glasses, because the other 3 glasses didn't have pink champagne. They had ordinary Moet Chandon champagne.
They weren't pink, were they?
There you are. One more question.
Well, I have a question for Vivian Scarlett. Why did you use the steak knife instead of leaving it to Mrs. White's poison to do its work?
I don't know what you're talking about. What steak knife? I've never...
The one you were fiddling around with in the dining room.
That's an absolutely outrageous suggestion, which I think you should withdraw.
A deduction, please. A deduction. And remember, in the order of who did it, with what weapon, and in what room.
I think we'd better... Shall we go straight for Mrs. White down there?
Yes, I think
We'll go for Mrs. White with the poison in the place where it was drunk, the drawing room.
So it's Mrs. White with the poison in the drawing room.
Go for the obvious first.
Well, I can tell you you're wrong on all 3 of those assumptions.
Good.
So we can eliminate those from our further inquiries.
No, I'd heard them saying that they were going to...
We'll wait for the solicitor.
I happen to know that Mrs. White did not commit the murder tonight. So, it's over to you, Thelma and Clive. 3 questions and a deduction, please.
Can I ask Vivian Scarlett, what did you do with the bridge trophy prior to playing bridge? You were holding it. What did you actually do with it?
Well, I replaced it on the mantelpiece.
Mrs. White, you'd know about that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I tidied it up later. I put it in its proper place where all the rest of the family trophies are.
In my study.
Thelma and Clive, your second question, please.
I would ask Colonel Mustard if he would do absolutely anything for Mrs. Peacock.
Well, as a chivalrous ex-army officer, I would, of course, do anything that I reasonably could for her.
Can I ask Mrs.
Please.
Peacock, did you know Jeremy Thorpe prior to them coming to Arlington Grange?
Mr. Hope. Mr. and Mrs. Hope.
Absolutely not. Would never have accepted them as house guests had I realised quite who they were.
Yeah.
Couldn't be firmer. Your deduction, please.
Well,
Simple,
Mr.
isn't it?
Gainful.
I think so.
Ms. Scarlett, we think, perpetrated this crime with the steak knife in the... Which one did we decide? The dining room?
So you're saying it's Miss Scarlett
Miss
with the
Scarlett
steak
with the
knife
steak
in the
knife
dining room.
in the dining
You're
room.
right on one of those three assumptions, but I'm afraid your deduction collapses. So, two sets of deductions there, but not quite there yet. But before we proceed, I'd like to put that same evidence to our grand jury, the 300 members of our studio audience. Now, you've seen the clues and you've heard the suspects and the detectives. What's your verdict? This is your chance to put your finger on the guilty party. Please make your decision now. And you've made your decisions on the evidence so far. Now, the choice you've made is that 22% of you say that Miss Scarlett committed the crime. But 1 in 4 of you, 26%, point the finger most clearly at Professor Plum.
This is outrageous! How can you do this to me? I've done nothing wrong. I'm going to be proved innocent.
We will hear more in good time, I'm sure. But is that your view at home? I wonder. We'll take a short recess now, a chance to compare notes perhaps before we find out who really murdered rich hustler Mrs. Janet Hope. Welcome back. A murdered bridge hustler with, we now know, 5 possible weapons, 5 rooms at Arlington Grange, and now that Mrs. White has been eliminated, the certainty that one of 5 suspects could be the murderer. And at this moment, the finger of suspicion is pointing very clearly at Professor Plum. But before our detectives make a fresh deduction, some fascinating new evidence for them to consider. Evidence that could help you reach a decision or indeed put you right off the scent. Now we can see what Colonel Mustard and Professor Plum were up to whilst Mrs. Scarlett was trying to convince her stepmother that the Hopes were hustlers.
Look, either you tell her or I tell her. One way or the other, we're going to stop this right now.
Yeah, but how? Without them thinking that I set them up.
Look, you did set them up.
Yeah, but not for this.
It's a risk we'll have to take. Look, you make yourself scarce. I'll see to it.
I don't want to speak to you.
Come, this was your idea.
It wasn't love.
Oh, come on, Pete, lighten up. It's not as if they can't afford it. They're loaded. And look on the bright side. I don't think you'll hear a peep out of them about bridge for a very long time, do you? Now, be a dear and tell me whether there's a phone, would you? Professor.
Mrs. Peacock.
Mrs. Peacock. Well?
What?
A phone.
Study.
Intriguing. But to decide who has the chance to apply this new evidence first, Thelma and Clive, based on the film you've just seen, an observation test. Name one of the 2 things that were on the hall table.
Listening, not looking, that's what I was doing.
We were talking.
We were talking.
Have a guess.
Let us say a vase of flowers.
A vase of flowers, correct. By luck, I think. Now, in this round, because we've got this sort of solution almost in our sights, we're really going to use just one question and then go to a deduction. So, one question, please, to the suspects.
Mrs. White, another question to you. We know you're innocent, so you will tell me the truth. Were you in collusion with Vivian Scarlett, and did you tell her that you would murder Mrs. Hope?
Most certainly not. I'd overheard that these people were cheats. And then when that poor young girl, Miss Scarlett, Vivian, came and collapsed like that, I was so upset, I just felt I had to do something.
No, Blanche.
Well, I did. I didn't mean to kill anybody. I just wanted to give them an upset
As we now know, Mrs. White is innocent. So, a deduction.
Same? Right, this is awfully quick. We think again, we're coming back to Miss Scarlett.
Why was that?
Because we think that she had reason to want to be rid of Mrs. Hope. Not quite that far.
And with what weapon?
We think again the steak knife, but in the study.
So you're saying it's Miss Scarlett with the steak knife in the study. You have 2 of those assumptions right, but I'm afraid